Is it necessary to get rid of us as buyer agents? Is it good to get rid of us as buyer agents and have this buyer out there that doesn't know anything, that's just like, okay, I'll write on this house. What do I do? And they go to the listing agency to actually write that contract. I think that's really dangerous personally.
How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the Shawn and Matt Show. My name is Matt, that is Shawn, and welcome to our show. Shawn, in today's video, we're going to be talking about the death of a buyer's agent. A house on Mars is now under contract. It's now pending. No, it's already closed. It was the quickest close in the universe.
I wonder how long construction took on that.
Well, we're going to be talking about that. And then we're also going to be talking about 1 year since the coronavirus, since the COVID pandemic and the impact on real estate. Shawn, let's begin by talking about the death of a buyer's agent. And last week, we talked about Rex Real Estate and their lawsuit against Zillow, against NAR, and how they could transform the real estate industry in terms of bypassing the MLS and not paying a buyer broker commission. And it begs the question, with all the downward pressure and all the resources available for buyers, why are sellers still paying a buyer's agent commission that they were paying 10 years ago? Why is the buyer agent commission so high? Should the seller be paying for that, or is the buyer paying for that because they're funding the deal? Shawn, at what point is the buyer's agent going to be 1.5% or 1% or lower? Because it's certainly heading that way.
Yeah, it's certainly heading that way. I think it takes a while, and there's always going to be a variance, right? So you'll start seeing it trend in certain areas, and then it starts grasping in others, and it takes a while to do that. I haven't seen anything go below where we are. I mean, we have seen those anomalies of certain listings that are just paying out basically nothing. I think it takes a little while, but the question is it smart? Is it smart to get rid of the buyer's agent? There's so many agencies out there that are trying to get rid of the buyer's agent. And why is the buyer agent there? In my opinion, it's to protect the buyer, right? To protect the buyer from listing agents that will take advantage of them, that when a buyer doesn't know the market, doesn't know what contingencies to put in the contract, has no clue. You know what? To give you an example, like I had a call this morning with Google, and I had this guy on there that basically has, a degree in Google, right? And it was Google Analytics and Google Ads. And he talked to me for an hour. It was supposed to be a half an hour. At the end, my head was going to explode. I was like, you can be speaking a different language to me because I have no idea what you're talking about, right? It's like us talking real estate to the layman, right? We could talk and go into details of contracts and everything else. And at the end of it, they would probably be like, my mind's blown, right? So you have a professional for Google to do the Google ads and everything. I'm a real estate agent. I don't have that knowledge. Then you have your normal person that's a buyer. They have a job. They don't study real estate like we do. They don't study contracts like we do. Is it necessary to get rid of us as buyer agents? Is it good to get rid of us as buyer agents and have this buyer out there that doesn't know anything, that's just like, okay, I'll write on this house. What do I do? And they go to the listing agency to actually write that contract. I think that's really dangerous personally.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think a lot of people out there will hire a professional, whether it's renovating their bathroom or buying a house, hire a professional. But I also think there's a lot of people out there that will watch a lot of YouTube videos on how to renovate a bathroom and try to do it themselves to varying degrees of success. And to your point about a buyer not knowing the contingencies, not understanding this, that, and the other, and then the listing agent taking advantage of whatnot, maybe that happens as a first-time home buyer, but after you've bought 2 or 3 houses, hopefully in the same state, or maybe, you're experienced, you're going to start to understand the process. So the notion of having, someone babysit you through the transaction because you're clueless, I think after a few transactions or, a well-documented infographic or PDF, I think that would really help out a supposedly clueless buyer.
Yeah, that's true. If you've gone through it a bunch of times, you're probably going to know the processes a lot better than somebody else. But think about it. When was the last time that person did a deal? Could it be 5, 10 years? How much does the business change in 5 to 10 years? How much do the processes change? All that stuff, the laws change, right? So what you thought was ordinary 10 years ago or was ordinary in New York is completely different in Virginia. And, I'm representing a buyer right now where his dad is in New York and he's giving me all this lingo in New York. And I'm like, sorry, man, we don't hire lawyers.
Attorney state.
Yeah, it's completely different, and you just have to kind of go with what I'm telling you. So there's always going to be buyers that need assistance, and there's always going to be, the contractor that knows how to redo the bathroom, and they'll probably screw it up and need somebody else to fix it.
So we've talked a lot about, whether the buyer agent commission should stay the same, whether it's going to go lower or higher, whether you should use a buyer's agent or not. What we haven't talked about is, what if this lawsuit is successful? What if, Rex wins, or one of these other lawsuits wins, where the MLS changes and now says that you don't have to pay a buyer agent commission, and now the buyer is responsible for the buyer's agent commission? What happens at that point? Because right now, the buyer's agent commission is worked into the price of the house. So if the house is $500,000, buyer agent commission is, $8,500, $7,500, $10,000. And that amount, assuming the buyer gets a loan, that amount is that amount is put into the loan throughout the 30 years. Now, that's a line item. What if the buyer was responsible for the buyer's agent commission? All we do is we just move that line item from one side of the transaction over to the other column. What's stopping a lender from including that into the loan? Because the biggest point of contention is a buyer coming out of pocket to pay the $8,500 or the $7,500. Realtors are saying, well, my buyer, they're putting 0% down. They can't afford to pay for my services unless the seller pays for it. I've seen this argument made. Well, if the commission is already, worked into the loan, what's stopping lenders from allowing the buyer's agent commission to be paid by the buyer and worked into the loan?
That's interesting, and it's a hard concept to get through in your head, but you have to think about appraisals, right? So I guess it could be the same, but at some point there's going to be an appraisal issue. And so if your buyer is, I don't know, it's really difficult.
Yeah, so let me ask you this. If a house sells for $500,000, it's under contract, an appraiser goes out. Let's say two houses right across the street, they're both the same exact house, both under contract for $500,000. One uses a buyer's agent and one does not, and they both sell for $500,000. Is the appraiser going to say, oh, well, this one has an added commission of $8,500, so I'm going to subtract $8,500 for, $500,000 minus $8,500, and that's the actual value of the house? No, it's going to be whatever the sales price is. So whether there's the line item or not, I don't see how the buyer's agent commission factors into the appraisal.
Well, then how would, if there was a buyer that, so first of all, what I want to tell you is that my buyer agency agreement is changing, all right? And that's the first step of any agent should be, you need to change your buyer agency agreement to make sure that you're covered for if that person goes and looks at a property that isn't paying out a commission, right? I know a lot of people put their agreements that just say, hey, we get whatever they pay out, but you're going to find yourself in a huge bind when they're paying out $1 and you thought you were making 10 grand, So I think that's the first step. The buyer agreement has to change. There has to be disclosure to the buyer to say, listen, if we go and see a property that isn't paying anything or is paying very little, you're going to have to probably make some of that up. So that's number one. Number two is, I understand, all right, $500,000 house and one has a buyer agent and one doesn't, but that's fine, right? They're not going to appraise it differently. But what if they're not paying out the buyer agency commission? The buyer has a buyer agent, and then they try to put that into the transaction. So it's 500,000, and say, they wanted to pay that guy 10 grand. Are they going to up the price to 510? It's already appraised at 500. So where's that money going to be cushioned in? Are they going to lower the loan value? You know what I mean? The LTV. So now you're putting 20% down, but actually subtract 10 grand from that. So now you're only putting like 9% or 8% or whatever it is down. So it could happen and it could be done, but at the very end, I guess it could be structured into the deal in some way like that. So, instead of 10%, you're putting 8%, but maybe the lender doesn't give you a penalty for that. But then who's taking the risk? It's the lender. Do they really want to take the risk when it's like that? I don't know. It's an interesting concept. It's happening. It's starting to go that way. I don't like big change like this. Personally, I like to just go with how things have been going. I understand people trying to abruptly change the business. Is it good for the consumer? Maybe financially, in some ways it is, but I think it could bring a lot of lawsuits to these certain agencies that will take advantage of people, take advantage of the buyer. And it also opens up dual agency and designated agency way more often, right? And that's what we were trying to get away from in a business. We were trying to get away from somebody taking advantage of a buyer. And that's easily what could happen, right? Your thoughts?
Yeah, I completely agree. I think if you're trying to, beat down one, gopher, if you will, another one pops up there. My question is, think about in the past year, your most popular listing. Whether it was Clifford Ave or, one of these condos, that had 10 or 15 offers, Gildar Street, whatever commission you were paying out, imagine if you were paying out like 0.5% less. So if you're paying out 3%, instead you're paying out 2.5%. If you're paying out 2.5%, you're paying out 2%. Do you realistically think that you would get less offers if you paid out half a percent less?
Probably not, to be honest, because I don't think most people as agents write in their agreements that the buyer's going to make the difference.
So my whole thing is at what point will that make a difference? Because obviously you are a cooperating broker, and I'm kind of just giving you my stream of consciousness here. And, if you're paying out 2.5 apples versus paying out like $1,000 flat fee to the buyer broker, well, that's a significant difference. So you might have, and again, you might have some buyer's agents. How does that conversation go? Will the buyer agent tell the consumer not to go after that property, or will they tell them, hey, you need to pay me X amount? Because at that point, I don't know if they're doing their fiduciary duty of representing their client to the best of their abilities.
Yeah, that brings up a really good point. And that's, again, why I say that you have to change that buyer agreement and have that conversation up front. Listen, there are changes in commission rates. We are used to a certain level, and I'm doing a ton of work. Now, think about how much a buyer agent does, right? First, we're meeting them to figure out what they're looking for. We're talking to their lender to make sure that they're approved. We then set up searches. We take them around forever sometimes. Sometimes it's a few houses. Sometimes it's months or years to find a place. Then we write one offer. We miss it because there's 10 offers. How many offers do we write? After about 4 or 5, we finally get one. Think about how much time and effort goes into that. And if we charge it on an hourly basis, I guarantee you they'd be shelling out a lot of money, right? So, why wouldn't we get paid, and why wouldn't we write in our agreement that, hey, listen, if this listing does not pay out, then you're going to have to pay, and we're going to have to figure out how to do that, because I'm not going to spend all this time doing this and then get $1,000. It just doesn't make sense for me. And if you don't want to go that route, and if you don't want to sign this document, then I'm not the agent for you.
Yeah, I've heard the argument of like, oh, if you put it on in a hot market and it sells in a weekend, that only took a couple of hours. It's like, dude, you should pay me double because of the results that I just got you and the experience that I have. You know, everyone wants to equate how much time it takes. Like, okay, well, how about this? The property sits on the market for 2 years because you're a terrible real estate agent. Should you be paid 10 times more? Of course not. That'd be silly.
Right.
So, you know, the buyer's agent is definitely something to watch for in the next couple of years as people continue to beat it down and beat those commissions down. Okay, our next topic is we're going to leave Earth for a second and go to Mars. And this article comes to us from Inman and states that, and a couple other places, that a house on Mars has sold for $512,000. This is a NFT transaction that was purchased with Ethereum, and it was essentially a bidding war. And the house is a digital rendering, and if you're watching on YouTube, they have a property tour video. I don't know if you can call it a property tour video, but it essentially looks like a house in Beverly Hills if all of Beverly Hills was on fire.
On fire, I was going to say.
And barren. And this virtual house sold for $500,000. So, Shawn, again, we talked about NFT last week. We're going to keep talking about NFT and real estate if things like this keep happening. You made a joke that you would sell your 3D tour for money, and I don't know if you're joking anymore because I think you might get some money for it.
How do I turn it into an NFT? Do you know how to do that?
You got to go to one of these weird artsy websites.
So maybe I'm going to do this. I'm going to try. Let's see what happens, right? Let's change my house into an NFT. So I have a 3D tour. It's gorgeous. It's really cool. It's a mid-century modern home, and I sold it last year. And, you know, it's a cool 3D tour. If I turned that into an NFT, you would own that, you know, the original thing.
Yeah, what if, you know, those houses in Beverly Hills that do cost $30 million?
Seriously.
What if there's like a NFT type of thing for that? I mean, you could be like a part
or celebrity
owner.
homes. Think about celebrity homes. Oh, I own the NFT, the 3D walkthrough of Brad Pitt's house.
Yeah.
You know, that's worth something.
It
Somebody
is.
will pay, especially these celebrities. All right, this is my idea. I'm starting the company. Don't copy me. Celebrity walkthrough, 3D walkthroughs, NFTs. Come on.
Yeah.
That'll sell.
Fundamentally, Mars House, love the name, is more of an art project than a real estate endeavor. But, like, where does the virtual stop and the real life start? Because the artist, I should plug the artist, Krista Kim, the artist says that in a few years we're going to be living in this this virtual reality, this augmented reality. And in terms of, like, buying virtual things online that don't really have any value. I mean, the easiest comparison I have is like the blue check mark on Instagram, and Gary Vee has been talking about this. You've seen people with the blue check mark on Instagram. It means that they're a verified user, and when you go to someone's profile, it's like, oh, dang, you got the blue check mark. You're legit. Like, how much would you pay for a blue check mark? I'd probably pay a couple $1,000s, and the thing is, it doesn't mean anything. Like, I can't go cash that in at a bank. But what it is it's just like, it's like, hey, everyone, I have this. Look at me. It's kind of like I don't want to say you're showing off, but it's like you're kind of verified. So.
We're at the very beginning of this, and it will be big. I can see it now. Like, people are going to have portfolios, their NFT portfolios. You know, then they're going to sell their whole portfolio. I think it's just going to grow and grow and grow, and we're at the very beginning of this. I think it's endless, to be honest. I mean, how many things can you create like this that are virtual that somebody wants to buy? There's billions of people in the world, billions of interests.
Is this like the .com bubble?
I think it is. I think we're on the verge of something here. I don't know. I mean, I don't know so much about this NFT stuff that I'm an expert in it or anything like that, but you see how right now Bitcoin is going nuts, and it's all based on blockchain, and NFTs are starting to sell for $500,000. It's insane. And so we're starting to see that build, and I think this is a huge, huge market.
blockchain needs to revolutionize real estate. I put it in my email newsletter. Like, if you can buy a fake house on Mars with cryptocurrency, why are you still driving to a Chantilly title company to photocopy your ID on a copy machine and then sit there and signing a stack of papers with a pen and a big stack of papers? You killed like 3 trees in order to buy your house. Why is that the process right now? Cryptocurrency and blockchain should completely revolutionize the real estate industry.
Yeah, I mean, and it should be a retina scan and a fingerprint to sign all your documents. Why do we have to go through all that stuff anymore? And we talked about this before, is blockchain title, right? Why wouldn't you have that whole title process in a blockchain so that it's uneditable, basically,
Like, God forbid someone's middle initial is like the wrong initial.
Oops.
The
It's
whole
over.
transaction is done. Oh my goodness. Yeah. Okay, well we're running out of time, so let's move on to the third topic, which is about we're 1 year into the pandemic. I mean, I think things are getting better. And what did we learn from a real estate perspective, Shawn? Because when this first started, we didn't really know where it was going to go. And I saw someone in the elevator when it first started, and he looked at me. He's like, "Your job is about to change in a big way. You're about to get shut down, essentially." And we saw in some states like Pennsylvania and some other states like New York, things did get shut down while people were just figuring out what to do about the virus. But once things started opening back up, buyers' needs changed significantly. What did you see with your buyers and with your sellers in the past year?
Okay, first of all, I'll tell you that I had intimate experience with this because I sold my house at the beginning of the pandemic. And
what month did you sell?
I sold it in March, right when it all hit, right? I had a plan. I was selling my house in the spring. To give you kind of a concept, it sold for, I put it on the market. I was expecting it to sell with multiple contracts in that first weekend. And that first weekend was the week it all shut down. It was the worst week. As a real estate agent, I'm like, oh, like why? I planned for this. I had it staged, everything. And it was just the worst week, But what do? I tried it. It didn't sell that first weekend. And I got selfish and I pulled it off. I put it back on about a week or 10 days later. And I ended up getting 2 offers. It sold for $950,000. Had I waited until now, so this gives you a concept of how much the market has changed. Had I waited, I would have probably got $100,000 more today. In a year, it would have probably sold for $1,050,000. So that shows you how that has changed, how the pandemic has changed the real estate market. This is not Amazon driven. So last year, Matt and I were talking about Amazon and how Amazon had changed our local market because there were so many people coming into the market to buy for an investment because Amazon was coming. That market kind of stopped in a lot of ways, especially in the condo market. But now the new thing is scarcity. There's no, it's supply. And that supply has caused so much increase in value over the year.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people say, okay, well, if I sell now, where am I going to move to? There's no houses to move to. Shawn, in your scenario, houses are going for $100,000 more. If you waited and sold this year, you would get $100,000 more, but then where would you move to and how much more would you pay for that house?
Yeah, I think, if you look at the house I bought, I think it's worth probably more than my other house, difference in value of what I got it for and what I could sell it for today. And literally, there was probably nothing else that I've seen that I would have bought. There may be a house in a year. And think about how many people would have been going after that. I had that experience where I wrote on a house before the house I got, and I was one of, I think, 15 offers. I mean, I wrote the best contract I've ever written. No contingencies, went way above. I did not get the house, thankfully, because I got the house I got, right? But this pandemic has changed the way we do real estate. It hasn't changed us as real estate agents the way we're performing because we're still going out and seeing properties. We're still showing properties. We just do it with caution, right? We're wearing masks. At the beginning, we were a little bit scared, but honestly, the entire pandemic, we have been showing properties.
Yeah, I think the biggest difference for me is just the space aspect. Because before I would see people kind of just needing a place where they could sit in front of the TV or have a little dining room space, and there weren't really high priorities for a home office or for the kids to have an extra learning center or a Zoom room. Now we're seeing, okay, I need this space for this activity, I need this space for that activity, this space for this activity, and a fenced-in backyard. So I think the priorities have changed to have as much of a indoor amenity package as an outdoor amenity package.
Absolutely. The buyer, what they're looking for has completely changed. And no longer are people commuting into the city for now, right? I think in a few months we will see that change and there will be a commute. But will it be a 5-day work week in the office? Probably not. It's going to be, for the most part, I think some companies will go back to that 5-day a week. But for the majority, I think they see that this is possible. People are able to work from home. I do need them to come into the office maybe 3 days a week, but then they can work from home for 2 days a week. And there's a real value to that, right? Not only is it helping out traffic, so traffic will be much greater, but people will need to commute. And so I think in a year, the whole dynamic of, oh, wait, maybe I moved too far out is going to change. I've seen many people do that. They think, oh, I want this house because, I can drive 45 minutes. I don't care. Well, that 45-minute out on a normal day right now is an hour and a half when there's traffic. So yes, people need space. They want the outdoor space, but man, they're going to suffer when it comes down to having to commute back.
Yeah, I think it's definitely an overcorrection in terms of people moving like way too far out, and then once things open back up and you're able to hang out again, people are gonna be like, oh dang, I really want to be closer. And the same goes for condos. When in early mid-March of last year, we saw the stock market take an incredible dive, and people were wondering, if it's going to go back up or if it's going to keep, going down. And what we now realize, hindsight is 2020 for 2020, is that was an incredible time to buy in the stock market. Just buy everything in March of 2020. And in March of 2021, what we're seeing is now is an incredible time to buy a condo. There is literally hasn't been a better time to buy a condo. The inventory is starting to creep up condo-wise. The market activity and the competition is not there just yet. And essentially, how do you time the market? How do you beat the market? It's to do the opposite of what everyone else is doing. Everyone else buying single-family houses, buying townhouses. Well, you can get an incredible deal on 2-bedroom and 1-bedroom condos in and around Arlington and D.C.
I keep saying this. Buy a condo. The 1-bedroom condo market right now is pretty slow. And the funny thing is, I wrote an offer last week for a condo. And the tough thing is first weekend on the market. You get these sellers that believe that they're still able to get last year's prices and they're going to sell right away. And reality is that's not what's happening, right? It's going to take a couple of weeks and you should probably come down on your price. So I wrote an offer for a client on a property. It's a 1-bedroom. It was a high-end 1-bedroom, first weekend in the market. We wrote under ask, right? $15,000 under ask. We got denied. I said, okay, fine. Let's just hold off. And we did. And so I talked to that agent today, and the listing agent, and I was like, hey, what are you thinking about that offer now? And she's like, yeah, pretty slow on the showings. So why don't you kind of resubmit something and see what happens? So this is, again, knowing your market, knowing what's actually happening, watching the trends, watching how many people are showing. This is a great time to get a deal on a 1-bedroom condo, even the 2-bedroom condos. 2-bedroom condos are working a little bit better because it's more space. But you're always going to get your entry buyers. Entry buyers, this is the time. The market's a little soft and the interest rates are starting to creep. So right now you could get a good deal and still get a really low interest rate.
Well said. Well, guys, that just about wraps it up for another episode of the Shawn and Matt Show. If you haven't already, be sure you subscribe so you never miss another episode. Hit the thumbs up button so I know you like this video. I got my little puppy barking in the background. You think it's going to pick up on the audio? I think it might.
Listen. There he is. Yeah. Oh, he's so cute. What's his name?
Breaks my heart. His name's Arlo.
Arlo. I love it.
With an A. short for Arlington.
Give him a shout out. Give him a little picture on YouTube.
I will. His name's not Arlington, and we shortened it to Arlo. His name is Arlo, and it's a tribute to Arlington.
I love it. Cute.
So thank you so much for watching. Until next time, we'll see you then.
Take care, guys.